You can keep it on Courtney's name.
Don't believe what it's in professional life.
Would you believe his name? I got you some candy. Little boy.
Good idea.
Could also wait. Yes, I am.
Okay, well, good evening. We will call to order the meeting for the Shenandoah City Council, Wednesday, May 9th, 7 p.m. Call the roll. Notice that everybody is here. If you'll stand with me, please, we'll say the Pledge of Allegiance. If you'd like to stay standing, I'll say a quick invocation for us after the pledge. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Under the Texas flag, I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Dear Lord, we just want to say thank you for your grace and your love as we come together tonight and try to navigate through the agenda to make the best decisions that we can for the city. We understand that oftentimes as a community when we come together we have differences of opinions. We might disagree with each other, but at the end of the day I think what's important for us to remember is that it's your grace and your love that we have the opportunity to show each other as neighbors. Help us through this meeting and help us make the best decisions for all of the city of Shenandoah. We pray these things in your son's name and all God's people said, Amen. Amen. Okay, well, item 5 is Citizens Forum, and I did not have anybody sign up to speak unless I just didn't get the card. But as y'all know by now, if we better, we have another Citizens Forum at the end of the meeting. So if you decide there's something you'd like to share with us, please feel free. So we will move from there into item 6, which is discussion regarding a resolution of support for the Grogan's Mill underpass.
Yes, just really quickly, Council Mayor, this is was proposed by Mayor Wheeler to discuss as a council body a resolution of support for the underpass at Grogan's Mill.
Thank you, Joseph. Yeah, so obviously we've talked a lot about the underpass. We talked about what the RUD and the township and the county all had plans for. I think all of us would agree that we'd rather it maybe even wasn't an underpass, but we certainly rather it wasn't an overpass, and not an overpass on Research Force and not an overpass on Grogan's Mill. So I think this was a very fair compromise on their part. I think it's a solution to an intersection that needs work. I think I told y'all before that the Township Director, Gordy Bunch, had shared with me that that intersection has the most traffic accidents annually of any intersection in the Woodlands. And he's only counting the data that he gets from the Montgomery County Sheriff's Department, he doesn't even count the data that we work when Shenandoah Police Department works that intersection at a traffic accident. So it's safe to say that that intersection is not safe. Sorry for the play on words. So I think that something needed to be done there, and this was a good compromise. And I think that us showing a resolution of support might help them get the funds from HGAC that they're asking for, especially in conjunction with the other projects that we have up and down Research Forest. So before I went too far off on that tangent, I definitely wanted to talk about it as a group and get everybody else's input.
Well, part of the HGAC process is, the whole process itself is very convoluted. It takes a long time. There will be several public hearings and public meetings to discuss the project in further detail. I'm supportive of this. I think it's important that we be part of the solution, not just opposition. They had ways to get the overpass in without including us. And so I think being part of the solution is very important. And this will bring probably $7 to $10 million worth of federal or state tax dollars into our region for transportation, which is fantastic. So, and on top of that, we wouldn't be committing any money from Shenandoah, I don't think.
Even better.
So, yeah. So I think it's a great step forward as being a good neighbor.
Yeah, I know personally from when I was campaigning 2 years ago that the word overpass would just send people over the top. So I think the underpass is a great idea.
Good. Bill, can you draft us a resolution of support that we could bring back next meeting and vote on?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Anybody have any other input they want to say on that? Anything they want to include?
I think it's a good idea because when it's all done and all the contractors go away, it's what we're left with. And that'll be for every resident and the people of the Woodlands and whoever travels like that will have that benefit. So I'm for it.
Very good. Okay, well, if nobody's got anything else, then we'll wait until next meeting when the city attorney brings back that resolution. We'll vote on it and get that sent over. Okay, we'll move into item 7 then, which is discussion regarding the 2018-2019 budget calendar.
Mayor and Council, there was a request made to change the workshop dates that were originally scheduled for the 17th and the 18th. The new proposal is for the 10th and the 11th. It still puts us in a good spot to, in case we have to do a tax rate hearing. So this is just kind of a discussion to see if this is feasible for everyone.
It's good for me.
When do you go back to school, Mike? Do you know when school
So
starts back up?
that's that 10th and 11th a week of in-service. It starts pretty early this year. I mean, I can pull up the calendar just to be sure, but that was what it actually starts.
So it's a conflict for you.
No, it'll work as long as it's not, as long as it starts at 4
Oh
or
yeah,
5.
that Friday it'll start at most likely 5
Yeah.
or 6.
Do 5 o'clock on Friday and then whatever we need on Saturday?
Yes.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Does that conflict with you or anything?
It should work for me. Unless we wanted to try Friday the 3rd during the day.
The only problem with that is that third budget discussion is not until the 8th, so you're not
Right.
going to know your true capital numbers
Okay.
until that, most likely. What we have in a surplus for capital.
Okay.
Well, candidly, I'm going to get in trouble because that's the last weekend before my kids go back to school. But but if that works for everybody else, I'll figure it out. So, I don't guess we're voting on this, but is everybody kind of in agreement that that 10th and 11th works?
I like it because.
Yep.
Works for me.
I know it works for you, Ron.
Who made this request?
Anyone pointing fingers?
I'm slowly but surely becoming a Packers fan.
Steelers are in town.
Okay, well, just I guess put those together
Okay.
for us. Thank you.
I'll
Thanks,
resend
Lisa.
the updated calendar to everyone.
Once again, brilliant.
Thanks.
Okay, item number 9, discussion and possible action to approve an agreement with T-Mobile.
No,
Nope, did I miss one?
Eight.
number 8.
I did say, oh, but that budget caught me twice. Okay, discussion of council request for the 2018-2019 budget. Just kidding.
So this was proposed by, I believe it was Byron, that he really just wanted to have a agenda item where you guys can give us feedback of what you want to see on the agenda, on the budget, before our final numbers are due on the 18th. So this is kind of just a feedback session. Also, we wanted to just update everyone that each council member can propose an addition or change, but any and all additions and changes must be supported by the mayor for approval to be applied to the budget. So ultimately, the mayor will have to okay it, but we're here to listen to you.
I thought that's what budget workshop is about.
But for the request, we're following the same procedure to add things.
I think she's just saying to add them in advance, maybe.
Yeah, to add in
some of that-
advance,
To
yeah.
get some of that stuff.
Oh,
Yeah.
Just
No,
to
it's
get
not
some
a
of it ahead
final
of
approval,
time.
it's just he has to support it for it to be applied, so.
So what is tonight then? Tonight, we're gonna talk about items that we want to add?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Correct. If you've got ideas that you'd like to see in either the operational or the capital
Okay.
projects,
But that
this
can
is the time to.
But that can obviously happen over the next month or so as well.
Yeah, the reason I asked for it is because last year, some things were brought up at the budget time, but there was a very compressed window to make
Right.
changes. And so I thought this would give us more time to get our budget juices flowing, really.
Okay, well, I'll kick it off then. How about that?
Only
So-
if you agree with the items you propose.
Yeah, right. And I don't know how much this is gonna be yet. I'm still waiting to hear back, or we as a city are waiting to hear back. Joseph has been working with me on this as well, but Entergy is going to come back to us with a number for what it will cost to run underground power off of Grogan's Mill up to the neighborhoods on Wellman Road. I know we talked about that, a year ago?
I think a little over a year
It
ago.
may have been a little over a year ago, and at that time, the number was about $250,000. If y'all remember correctly, the way it works is those neighborhoods off of Wellman Road that have underground power from the developer, or underground utilities by the developer, are connected through the valley. So if a tree limb goes down in the valley, basically the Christmas tree system that goes across to Wellman Road then causes Silverwood Ranch, Lily, parts of Tuscany Woods, any of those developments of Malaga Forest, and then ultimately whatever goes in at the David Weekley neighborhood.
and so to be clear, this is really about providing a redundant power source. It's not so much the aesthetics of getting it in the dirt. It's about creating a reliable power. I remember
Right.
as part of this system, we said, look, what can y'all do to help us out? Underground power was dead in the valley, but Energy said, well, we'll do an aggressive early tree cut. Guess what? Hurricane Harvey didn't lose any power, and haven't lost power in the valley in quite a while, except for, I think maybe a transformer went out, but in terms of maintenance issues. So this is not an aesthetics issue, this is a reliability.
This is totally a reliability issue because you have houses that should be reliable based on the fact that they have underground power, but they are connected to the power source by overhead power. And so, we have the opportunity to fix that. I'd like to talk about it. And so again, I don't know the exact dollar amount. It was around $250 the last time.
Yeah.
They're supposed to get us a firm number.
Okay.
That's all I have.
Well, I'd like step 2 and see if we can pay for recycling.
Okay.
I'd like to talk more about a dog park. And whether, I'd like to see us put it in our budget, but send it to the MDD and see if they would consider paying for it. Since it is an eligible project under our bylaws.
I have 5 items. One I'd like to.
You have to pick one.
Nope. I can do it.
It's a dream list. It's like Santa's wish list.
They aren't all that expensive, but I would like to see a plan for adding police officers. That may already be in the works, Chief, but
It is.
we've got a lot of development coming, so we need to be prepared.
You got a number? 2, 4, 6?
Of officers.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll depend on Chief's recommendations
There you
to
go.
a large degree, but I could certainly see at least 2, maybe more. I'd like to hear a plan for additional trash bash capacity, Joseph, so I don't know if that's adding a separate event or if you can expand so that we can just meet increased demand. I'd like to see, and this is probably already in there too, but I know last year we partially implemented a salary adjustment for staff. So I'd like to see, make sure that's in there. And then a park and pathway plan update, which would go towards Ted's thought of a dog park and maybe other plans. I think we've pretty much built out our park and pathway plan that's over a decade old. And then I'd like to see, and I don't know what the solution here is, but I'd like to see some work done for the I-45 southbound feeder road and what we can do to address the lack of development. And there's vacant buildings, there's dilapidated buildings, and it's getting worse. So I'd like to, probably involves including somebody in a planning function, a consultant, but something that we can start addressing that, because I think that's one of the biggest areas that needs to be addressed in the city.
Just on that last one, talking like maybe setting up its own planning zone.
It already has a planning zone. Neighborhood Services pretty much covers that area. I mean, mostly I'm talking from Wellman South to Research. It may be that we need to carve off the I-45 section, but at the very least, we need to take a hard look at is there something in our regulations that's causing those buildings to be a lack of investment by the property owners when everything else around us is getting renewed investment. So, is there something? I mean, at our joint MDD and P&Z meeting several months back, we talked about potentially a lot of cities do like a downtown revitalization plan. So maybe something along those lines. I'm not sure what the best solution is, but I'd be open to looking at a number of possibilities.
The other item I had also was looking at a safety plan for our city hall area, for our employees in specific, and readdressing some of the security on the administrative side, not in the building, but outside of the building in the parking lot.
Okay.
In specific, I know sometimes with our staff leaving later at evenings, they're pretty vulnerable coming in early and also leaving late.
Okay.
Well, I have 2. They're not the cheapest in town, but I'd like to start codification of our ordinances and go through that. I don't know what it would cost. I imagine it's rather expensive, but I'd like to look at that. I'd like to rework the IDC and bring it up to today's standards. I think that's really needed. So those are my 2 things.
Now, those budget items, you're talking about bringing in maybe some outside consultants or something?
Well, like freezing nickels for the IDC again, okay? And working that again. Codification of ordinances. I'm sure, Bill, we're going to need paralegals and a lot of reading and such like that, so there'll be some.
Yes, sir.
All right, so,
I'm sorry.
okay, yes, so, wasn't sure where. So I've got a couple, most of them are a little minor. Most of the 2 of them, I don't really understand what the costs are gonna be. Joseph and I talked briefly. One, I'd like to clean up the Holly Hill Park area and actually get it to the point where we can start using it. I know we've improved some drainage. We did some drainage work on that. I definitely I'm a big fan of keeping it natural, just creating a walkway. I specifically would like a walkway between Holly Hill Park and Bella Luna, Tuscany Woods. You put some picnic tables. Gentle, natural is what I'm thinking here. Get the drainage so the people can kind of enjoy nature, and yet at the same time it's not going to be a swampy area. So definitely, that's, and again, I don't have any numbers on that. We'll just try and get some hard numbers on that. Little things, I'd like to get a real-time check register. We've talked about that in the past. I believe it's an Encode. We pay them one-time fee, or maybe it's a yearly fee, so that basically our checks, and we can click through, and again, that just creates a little bit more transparency. I think that's in the nature of $6,000, $7,000, maybe more than that, but that's something that I think would be useful for everybody to kind of, just again, helpful transparency there. I'd also like to propose, and I'm working with Joseph here to propose some minor improvements to the pool area, including improving the drainage that's north of the pool. And there's some issues with that maybe adjust the budget in terms of how much we do, or maybe how much we do this year. There's stagnant and standing water at times, which that's never a good thing. We want to keep that drainage, and it's going to involve some issues in terms of how we handle that, to open that up, make that useful. Because most of the time, that place stays fenced. We're paying to cut it. Families, it's fenced and locked. You can't go picnic there. You can't enjoy that beautiful green grass. I think if we've got beautiful green grass, it ought to be enjoyable. And we're paying to cut it, we're paying to maintain it, we're paying for it. Hopefully we can get it. And again, at this point, I don't have any numbers for you on that. We do need some more lighting around the pool. It's really dark. I mean, once it goes dark, it's almost pitch black. So I would like to add, that's sort of like the list of minor things, but there's kind of a list of stuff. And we'll get the cost for the north side area. I'm going to throw out something that somebody's mentioned, not certainly a personal request, but I do think it's something that's worth talking about at some point at different times. People have asked about the possibility of a community center or a place for the community to meet, and whether we can reclaim and repurpose space that's in this building already, or whether we need to consider new construction is something that I think I'd like council to discuss. And maybe that's a whole separate agenda item or something like that. But a community center is something that people have asked about. So I'm going to throw that out there as a...
See, Mike, you agree with me a lot more than you thought you did.
It's 2 meetings in a row.
All right, so did you get that list
Yes.
of different items? We'll get together on that and try to figure out. And obviously, some of these budget items will need better numbers on. And so those of you who are proposing them, if you can, try to do some legwork and come up with some preliminary numbers, that would probably help staff quite a bit. Okay. If nobody's got anything else, we will move on to item 9, which is discussion and possible action to approve an agreement with T-Mobile.
Yeah, so this has been a working progress for probably over a year now. About a year ago, maybe a little more, T-Mobile approached the city with a proposal to pay for lease space on our water tower. And what they want to put on the water tower are antennas for their network. Went back and forth. Bill has helped significantly on working with the agreement so that the city is adequately represented. And we've finally come to an agreement that everybody's happy with. And it's, I'll hit a few highlights of the agreement. So they're leasing about 150 square feet for some of the facilities related to the antenna. That's in addition to the actual space for the antenna that go close to the top of the tower. And they'll pay the city $25,000 each year for use of that space. I would propose that those, if we do enter into this agreement, that those monies would be used for maintenance on our water system, on that water tower. It needs painting, it needs a lot of maintenance, and none of it is cheap, as we all know when we had to repair a well motor. So just some of those highlights. I also want to say that Mike Crane from T-Mobile is here as well, so as you discuss, if you have specific questions for them, he's available to help answer any of those questions. We also have a picture of what it is proposed to look like, if you're interested in seeing that as well.
Yes,
What I was looking for.
I think that's what we all were looking for.
I've seen that.
That was it, you had it.
You had it, yeah.
So, yeah, I did submit some site plans with the agenda. We didn't get this picture till earlier this morning. But you can see, if you look closely, you can see the antenna. They're very camouflaged, really hard to notice. But they'll do their job for T-Mobile.
So we're gonna get something that looks just like that then.
Right, there's 3 of those sets. I'm sure at thirds on that tower. So there's 2 sets on each of those sections. They will have their own. They'll drop their own electrical meter in, so they'll pay their own electrical. But it's what you see.
That's fine. I think the only other question I had was in the lease agreement. I didn't see any kind of escalator clause, so it's a flat 25,000 for 25 years.
No, 5 years.
5 years.
5 years.
Okay, so we do get a different rate possibly after 5 years.
Well,
It didn't jump out at me in the contract.
right. That is it's set up for automatic renewals, but if a rate increase needs to be discussed, then notice can be given to T-Mobile, and that can come up after 5 years.
All right, okay.
So I didn't notice, and you might be able to point us to it, I didn't notice anything in the contract that clearly defined the maximum size of the antennas,
The details.
Physical appearance, color, all of those types of things. I mean, in other words, this picture looks great, and I hate to be a pessimist, but I go driving down the road one day and I see an antenna that's twice as big and it's black. It's like, okay, wait a minute, that's not what we agreed on. But I didn't see anywhere in the contract where it stipulated this is what it had to be. Doesn't mean I didn't miss it.
So they have proposed plans, which was an exhibit.
Right, but they weren't, but are those plans part of the contract, or are those just plans? Because those plans came after, what looked to me like after the contract.
Well, let me take a quick look here.
Address that if that's okay with council.
Yeah, absolutely, come on up.
Yeah, this is the old one.
My name's Mike Crane, and I represent T-Mobile. The exhibits would include the site plan drawings and the way the lease would read. And, Mr. Farabee, I'll let you confirm, but it should give you guys the right to approve any drawings, any changes to those drawings before any changes were made. In other words, what's up there, if we want to change those antennas, you would have the right to review those drawings first.
So on your site plan, it shows proposed T-Mobile antennas mounted to existing tank wall. And so it shows the 2 antennas in 3 different sections, but it doesn't give a description of the size, it doesn't give a description of the color. It basically just says antennas. At least, again, that's why I'm asking the question.
No, understood. I mean, the full set of construction drawings would become the exhibit, and that would describe the model of the antenna, the fact that they would be painted to match the tank itself, and that would be part of the exhibit to the lease.
Well, I'm going to be honest with you. If we're going to be voting on this tonight, that's what I think we ought to be looking at.
Okay.
Yeah, this is discussion, it said discussion and possible action.
Possible
but
action,
This
yeah.
is the first, this
We can
is,
get the details squared away and get it for a vote next meeting.
Okay. That was just my concern, was I didn't see in the contract
No,
where we had
understood.
any sort of minimums or maximums or.
Right. And I think the takeaway should be that you all would have the right to review and approve any changes that were made. The initial drawings, which would be submitted for permitting and what have you through the city as well, would delineate the size, the color. I mean, it's again designed to match the tank. But if there were to be a change of technology that, precipitated a new type of antenna, you all would review that as well.
Okay, very good. Anybody got any other questions?
You brought up technology, so these, both 4G and 5G compatible antennas?
You know what, that's, unfortunately, from the network side, I'm more on the real estate side, so
Gotcha.
I don't believe necessarily these are gonna be 5G. That's still a technology and process, but I'm not an engineer from that standpoint.
Okay, fair enough.
Joseph, you mentioned painting the water tower. Whenever that needs to happen or other maintenance, how will this impact our ability to do that?
So there's stipulations in the contract. We need to give them, I believe, 90 days notice of any sort of maintenance to that regard. They'll bring in a cow.
Correct, cell on wheels.
Cell on wheels, and we'll have the space designated within that area that they can set up. This is all at their cost. Have that set up while we do our maintenance, and then they'll get the antenna back in place.
How tall are those cell on wheels?
They can go up to 100 feet. We did use a lot during Super Bowl, different events. I mean, it's not uncommon to see those during, Eleanor Tinsley Park. You see them all the time, but it's up to 100 feet.
Yeah, they are right in people's backyard.
Understood. And, we would try to keep the height at the same height as the antennas that are going to be on the tower, but it's understood it would be very limited amount of time those would be there, and just for that purpose.
And then my last question is, how did we come up with the number of $25,000 per year?
That was the
Negotiated between?
well. There was
No,
not,
that-
yeah. Go ahead.
It was negotiated number. I've forgotten the first offer was,
Remember.
I can't remember, 15,000. And
Correct.
we looked at, I can't remember now, we talked to 2 or 3 other cities
Okay.
and got prices.
Would this prohibit us from doing a similar deal with another provider?
No,
would
it's
not.
specifically in the contract that we can do that with any other provider. It's not exclusive.
Okay.
Can I ask him a question?
Sure.
Is this going to interfere with the radios we have up in that tower now, the repeaters?
Absolutely not. That is part of the agreement, is a non-interference clause, especially towards public safety.
Okay.
Yeah, it's in the contract.
And that would obviously supersede the commercial side of it, public safety. So, if anyone's going to shut anything down, it would be T-Mobile, not, if there was an interference.
So when y'all go to put these in, we can test it to make sure there's no interference, right?
Yeah, they will actually do what's called an EME study, which tests interference, obviously there are different frequencies, but they would test that to make sure there's no interference.
What frequency is a cell phone run off of?
The frequency, I believe we're in the 1900 megahertz range, but I would have to check. There's different
Okay, 'cause
frequencies that T-Mobile offers.
these are down in the 800, so I guess it won't.
Yeah, correct. Most likely, this would not be anywhere near, that range at all. I mean, that's exclusive to public safety. T-Mobile didn't have the right to operate.
All right, thank you.
It's a good question though, Chief. There are harmonics that.
Absolutely. And line of sight, different issues that, you want to make sure there's not any concern. That is, certainly the first priority.
Only other thing I'd like to see in this contract, if we were to vote on it tonight, my 2 cents would be, other than the fact that I would want it pretty clearly spelled out, what they were able to, from a description standpoint, what they were put on the contract. The other thing is I'd like it clearly spelled out that they had to give the city notice anytime they were coming to do any sort of maintenance or.
It's in there.
That is a portion of it.
Sort of, and that was one of the things, it says landlord shall furnish reasonable and secure access to the premises on a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week basis to the tenant and tenant's employees, agents, contractors, and other designees. And it goes on to explain a little bit, but it doesn't say anything about the fact that the tenant has to notify the landlord prior to coming to do any work on the antennas.
Well, yes and no. Our facilities are locked and they do not have ability to get in until we give them access. They do not have, T-Mobile will not have access to our property without us there, and they pay for security personnel. In the contract, when they're there.
And that's for
Okay.
us to stay in compliance with TCEQ rules and regulations.
So we're not just giving them a key to the.
No,
to the
Correct.
path.
No, there will be a
No.
staffer or at least a police officer there anytime that there is someone on site.
All right, well, that makes me feel a little better.
And to be clear towards that end, they're very rarely there once a month, once a quarter in some cases, unless there's an emergency issue, a power outage. And then, of course, they're gonna, 2 in the morning, may be the case, but that's when they would consider an emergency. But again, to keep coverage.
We have other utility companies that show up without telling us, and, obviously our residents are the ones that notify us that they came, so I'd like to keep that from happening.
Understood.
Joseph, when is this tank scheduled to be painted?
The exterior, that's a few years down the road. We do have the interior is gonna need to be painted, but that should not affect their antennas, because that'll just be the interior of the water storage tank.
Anybody got any other questions? Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
All right, so it was a discussion and possible action agenda item, so if somebody would like to make a motion, they can.
I would actually let us bring it back because we'll have the plans as Exhibit C or D.
That's what I'd rather see happen, but I'm just trying to go by the right rules.
Appreciate you.
Okay, well then let's move on then to item 10, which is discussion and possible action regarding Halloween Safe Streets and National Night Out.
This year, council, we wanted to move the Halloween Safe Street over to Hickory Ridge, Blue Ridge, Holly Hill, and Driftwood, to that edge of the neighborhood. And then, again, National Night Out, we're gonna do at the park on October 2nd. Halloween Safe Street, again, is gonna be on, of course, on October 31st from 6 to 8 p.m. So I think National Night Out was great in the park. It's a little bit more work, took a little more tents, but it was a good venue. And it worked out good for everybody.
I thought so.
I thought that was great.
I agree.
Yeah.
So
I will, so I am curious, and this is more just being curious, just a question. How do y'all determine, do you go and talk to these residents and get a feel for what the appetite is, if they want it on their streets, or is that?
everybody wants it on their street no matter where they live. So when we go out, before we have it, we go out and we get the participants to fill out a form to find out what they're gonna do, and then we also bring them decorations too, and we bring, so we know to bring candy to their house and what all we're bringing to their house. The candy, the decorations, everything. So, we get everybody asking us if they can have it on their street. So we just try to circulate it as much as we can to get everybody involved. And it's been a long time since we've been over there. And we try to get it where we haven't ever done it before. So that's how we do it. It's gonna be hard to get any of the Grogan's neighborhoods is gonna be tough to do because of the traffic going through there, and it's gonna be dangerous to have those kids out there. So those are gonna be, but that's gonna be something we're.
You'll figure out a solution to that though, right?
Of course we will, of course we will. It's just gonna be,
We've done Tuscany Woods and Silverwood, and a lot of it has to do with circulation and loop, right? You gotta find streets that create a nice.
that we can handle enough people.
And parking.
And parking and all that
And
kind
we
of
try
stuff.
to keep it around 100 houses. Because that's, as many people as we get, we gotta keep it around 100 houses. If we get less than 100 houses, it's almost too many people. Because you see how many people turn out for these.
It's a good turnout.
So, it's hard to do an area less than 100 houses.
How are you gonna control Holly Hill Drive? Because that's a major ingress egress. to the
There
city.
again, we have to shut down the street. And it'll have to be shut down for 2 hours, just like we do Cedarwood over on the other end. We had to shut it down for 2 hours. And we were gonna
Put a car at
cancel
the
it
entrance
because
so no one-
of the rain. We thought about canceling it. And I think they would have came after me if I'd have canceled it last year. So I don't think there's any place I could have hid from everybody. So
We planning to block Holly Hill at Research?
I'm gonna block it at the parking lots where they can turn around in the parking lots, or they can park in the parking lots.
Okay.
So we're gonna give them that option to do either one. And then we'll block it at Holly Hill Court. And they can either turn around there, or else they can pull back around and park somewhere further out, so they're not blocking traffic. So, and then again, at the other end, at Driftwood, we'll run them back down the other way so they can park down there and walk down. Most people walk, but,
Right.
you know, we get a lot of visitors that park everywhere.
Right.
So we get a lot of vehicle traffic. And we try to keep it away from the kids. That's all we're trying to do, keep everybody away from the kids.
Exactly.
So we got 2 hours to keep them out, and then after that, we try to get all the kids out of the street and start opening everything back up.
Any other questions for Chief?
Do we need a motion here?
Discussion and possible action, so if somebody wants to make a motion.
Make a motion to approve?
I'll second.
So just to be clear, you're approving both items on the agenda?
Yeah.
For the dates and the locations? So Councilman Raymaker makes a motion to approve both locations and dates for Halloween Safe Street and National Night Out. Councilman Beavers seconds the motion. Do I have any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Item 11, update of the city's finances for the past 6 months.
Mayor and council, I did a quick 6-month financial overview for you guys, breaking down our 3 major funds, general fund, CVB, and water sewer. If you look through the report, I break it up by revenues, expenses, and then at the end I have a summary of our available cash, also known as reserves. So just some highlights for you guys. Our revenues for general fund are up almost 110,000 at this point. Oh, and this is all 6 months. This is not year to date. I mean, yeah, so it would have been March 30th. This is the cutoff. CVB's revenue is up $273,140.82. Part of this is the Home 2 Suites opening. They were not part of the full revenue last year. Water sewer revenues are up $214,126.17. This is primarily due to new construction, also the new hotel, some new businesses coming in. Summary of expenses, we are actually doing pretty well so far. We're coming in a little bit lower. However, the city does not do periodic budgeting, so cash flows are dependent on when dollars are spent. So if things were purchased ahead of time, later, that's all going to mess with your cash flows. I did a 5-year history on department spending. Your top 3 spenders are police, admin, and then our non-department, which is our insurance, both the city's insurance and the employees' insurance benefits. And so CVB's expenses, they are down $211,193.10, and that's primarily due to NCAA. NCAA was last March, so. Water and sewer spending is a little bit up. That's primarily to the motor and well 3 going out. Also some other items that were spent earlier this year. And then if you go to the last page, summary available cash. As you can see, we're pretty consistent at this point. General fund reserves is at 5.6 million. CVB is at 2.6 million, and water and sewer is at about $1.2 million. So if you have any questions, I'm here to answer them. I don't want to bore everyone though, so kept it simple.
I really, really appreciate, so I'm the one that asked for this, I really appreciate you running these numbers and running the 6-month numbers. And And I asked for that for two reasons. One, because we're approaching budget season, and I think it's useful for us to see, well, in last August, we thought we were going to spend X number of dollars, so we thought the budget was going to go sort of this way. What did we actually do with the money? And I think that's really important for us to see, and to kind of get a sense about perhaps where the next 6 months are going. So looking back and seeing where we came from, as we start to write and make plans for our budget, what did we actually do? What actually happened? And there's several things that step out to me. One, we continue to grow our cash. Our spending is down in almost every department except for police, which is a good thing. I like that, you know, we're able to pay for things with cash. That's good to be able to do that. So.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate the 6-month window, because then we can kind of extrapolate out when it comes to revenue and say, okay, where are we going to end up at the end of the year, plus or minus what we anticipated. It looks like we're going to be really healthy at the end of the year. That's, you know, cross your fingers, don't want to jinx us, but that was sort of what that was sort of what I was hoping for, coming off of Harvey to begin with. But the city as a whole, I think what this shows really is what we all knew. The city as a whole is really healthy right now and doing well.
Thank you for putting this together.
Oh, no problem.
My one comment is on the reserve page, the last page. It's a minor comment, but I don't consider all that to be reserves. It is existing cash balances, but we intentionally build up our cash balances so we can do a pay-as-you-go for capital projects. So paying for projects out of cash balances is not a bad thing.
No.
We've previously this year we funded part of the fiber to the home in existing cash balances. We funded the water plant 4 in existing cash balances. I think that's very good for our residents, and I'm thankful for the work y'all have done on it.
I would actually like on piggyback on that a little bit. I'd like to add, perhaps to the next agenda, a discussion about how we talk about and how we classify cash. Right now, we keep talking about there's a community, there's a discussion, and there's some concerns about what do I mean when I say cash? And some people use, well, that's your reserves. Like, well, no, some of that's actually allocated.
Already spent.
Is spent.
Yeah.
Some of that we know is coming down the pike. Some of that is actually has capital projects associated with it. So without getting too much into that, I'd like to have a discussion about, right now we kind of have one giant checking account and everybody points to it, and when they point to that, what do they mean? Is it time for us to talk about setting up a separate account that actually is this is our reserves, this is our surplus or reserves or whatever we want to call it, versus our operating cash, much like many of us do in sort of personal finance. We have a reserve fund, a savings account, and then we have our operating account. Again, what the details of that would be and how the best, in compliance is with good accounting practices and all that. But I think it'd be a worthwhile discussion to have, so we can, again, helps transparency and help people understand what's reserves versus what's just operating cash. So.
Okay.
Unencumbered operating cash.
Yeah.
Anybody got anything else? Looks good. Thanks for putting that together, Lisa.
Thanks, Lisa.
Thank you again.
I like the format too. It's real simple to read
Yeah.
for a non-finance guy. Okay, let's move into item 12, which is update regarding water plant number 4.
Yes, we're getting close to the end of the construction for water plant number 4. And when staff and myself, a couple of staff members and myself went out there, we saw just a couple of things that we'd like to get updated. We got cost on it. The total cost ended up going over the reserves that we had, that council had already approved in the contract. So we wanted to run that by you to let you know that we're going to be adding about $8,400 to the contract. And because we had never done it before, we didn't know what the policies, procedures, and practices were. So we thought we'd go overboard and just present it to you. And if there's any questions, I can go over them, or they're pretty self-explanatory, I thought. But
for the record for YouTube, why don't you go over them real quick?
One is because of the soil that was brought in for the first phase, to raise the site up out of the swampland there. It ended up being a little bit sandier than we thought. So instead of just doing the hydro seeding, which takes about 6 months to a year to kind of establish and to quit to stop eroding the soil underneath, the contractor said, hey, it would be really good, especially since you're all over us on keeping the site clean and not dragging mud off because of stormwater, is to put a 1 to 2 foot strip around the toe of the levee of sod instead of just hydro seed, kind of jumpstart the whole thing. We thought that was a good idea because we are an MS4 permitted city and everything else. So that's item 1. Item 2 is kind of the driveway parking lot area on site. It slopes in two, kind of half goes towards the east and half goes toward the west. The west side ends up going right underneath the hydro tank. And again, that sandy soil, it just kind of rips right along and it takes all the soil with it. So we thought we'd put like a 5 foot wide little, a really shallow swell. So that way all that nuisance water and the majority of the major runoff would be on concrete from when it hits the site all the way until it hits the pond water. Secondly, there's this is where I haven't gotten fully involved with operations yet over there. 1 to 2 times a week they pull samples out of the tank. Is that about right?
Samples and also readings for the pressure.
And we're updating water plant 2 to have concrete sidewalks go to it, so that way if it's raining, flooding, or whatever, it's safer and easier to get to. And we're also adding a sidewalk all the way down the generator to the fill tank, so that you're never stepping off into grass or weeds or rocks, dragging a hose. And usually when you're doing that, it's Hurricane Harvey time, because that's when you're using the generator and stuff. So we thought those 3 things would just be a nice little addition. The total cost was $13,800, and then I broke them out individually as what they are. What this does not show is we have not finalized the contract, so there's going to be some overages and underages. I think that's a real word. When everything's said and done, we might have a change order that actually brings it back down underneath the cost that was originally done, but we haven't gotten there yet. And by the way, we're starting to pump water out of the ground to fill the tanks up so we can get it all chlorinated and tested to make sure it's all safe. And then the contractor is going to start testing it as a whole system.
Great. I'll move to approve.
Second.
I don't think we were voting on it.
This is an update. So yeah, the total cost is under $15,000. I went ahead and told them to do it. I just wanted to bring it before council, since it was going to put it slightly over the total contracted amount.
But it's good to know everybody would have approved it.
We got to get that water going.
I thought you might. I just want to update.
Yeah, no, I appreciate the update and I appreciate the thoughtfulness. It's better to do it right the first time, you know?
Yeah, we tried. The other thing is that if there's any thoughts on if we do run over a pre-approved budgeted amount, do you always want to see it? Or if it's under 5% of the total cost, I mean, don't hide it, but
No, I think we'd like to see it just in this format. If it's under $15,000, I think the city administrator or interim city administrator in this case can make that call. But if it's, I think it'd still be good for us to know about.
Obviously, if it's over 15, we have to come to you.
Right. Yeah, no, I think it's still, communication and transparency is always a good thing. Okay, well.
That's all I have unless there's questions.
If nobody's got any questions, we'll move on to item 13, which is the city administrator comments.
All right, I have just one comment, one update. So the city received a letter from the governor's office informing us about some funding for hazard mitigation. This is through the Texas Department of Emergency Management as well as FEMA. And basically the governor was urging municipalities affected by Hurricane Harvey to take advantage of these funds for hazard mitigation. So what that is those are projects that are going to alleviate future flooding issues. Now, as you as the city council know, and also the MDD know, there's a project that we've been looking at for quite some time, and I'm talking about the East Side Relief Pond. We've already got preliminary engineering reports. We've got some hydrologic, hydrostatic testing already done. It's a perfect project for what this grant money is made available for. So I just wanted to update council that right, staff has applied. We completed what's called the notice of intent. We've sent that to the Texas Department of Emergency Management, specifying this project as one for them to consider for funding with a grant. The icing on the cake of this one is that Congress has gotten involved on this one and basically waived the 25% cost share requirement, which is usually in place where the municipality would pay 25% of that cost. They've waived that, and they're willing to fund up to 100% of these projects. So that application is in. Looking at their timeline, they say they have a 90-day review process for the notice of intent. If it is a project that they want to consider for grant funding, they will send an application to the city, which we would then complete, send any additional reports, information we have. They have then another 90 days to review that and notify whether there's going to be grant funding, which is light speed for the federal government, 180 days. But it's just a great opportunity. Just wanted to make council aware that that was in the works and in progress.
Did you have to fill out a dollar value in the notice of intent?
Yes.
How much was that?
So we looked at the option 3, which is around $24 million, because that provides flooding relief, not only for us, but for the areas upstream and downstream. So that seemed the most applicable option that would apply.
The governor's got 10 billion to give out, so it's okay to ask. I still think we also need to, and we talked about also in conjunction at the same time, making that same application to the USDA. So
Right.
They also have quite a bit of money that's not coming out of the same pool. And so if we don't get all of the money from the governor, maybe we get some from the USDA, or if we don't get any, maybe and that money's sitting there, it's on the ground, ready to be taken. So I think we can do both of those at the same time. Are you familiar with that program, Derek? With the USDA's program as well? Okay, good.
Great work.
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
Is that it?
That's it.
Okay, let's move into item 14, which is citizens forum, and I still haven't had anybody that wanted to speak. Shocking. Come on.
Everybody's happy there.
Okay, we'll move into item 15 then, which is council's inquiry. And we will start with Councilman McLeod.
All right.
Let's see here. So tonight I want to take the opportunity to thank the voters of Shenandoah, the roughly 550 people who took the time to invest in their community and made a choice in this election. To those who voted for Mayor Wheeler, I thank you for faithfully considering the issues and voting to move Shenandoah forward in a positive direction. To those of you who voted for Mr. Henson, I also thank you, and I thank you for your passion and your dedication. Thank you to everyone who took the time out of their busy lives and voted for either candidate. Thank you as well for those who voted for Councilmember Raymaker and myself. Tonight, I want to issue a challenge to both groups of voters. In fact, actually, this is a challenge to all the residents of Shenandoah. I want to make this challenge because Shenandoah is not just a geographical location on a map. Shenandoah is a community. Indeed, we are actually a family. Like all families, we're going to have some disagreements, and that's okay, that's healthy. However, as a community, we need to make sure our voice is heard. We need to ensure our needs are considered and we are not ignored in coming decisions. We need to make sure Shenandoah is remembered and our needs are considered by county, state, and even federal decision makers. And the biggest way to do this is to be a community that votes. So tonight, I'm issuing the 1,000-vote challenge for Shenandoah. I'm setting the goal for our city that Shenandoah residents will cast 1,000 votes in the November election. That's impressive. That's a big reach, I know. So to meet this goal, I'm going to ask each of you who voted in this election to commit to personally finding 1 or 2 or more residents who did not vote in this election and convince them to vote in the November election. I know that together we can do this, and Shenandoah's voice will be heard. When Shenandoah votes, Shenandoah wins. That's all.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you, Mike.
Very thoughtful challenge, Mike. I really like that. I just want to congratulate you, Mr. Mayor, on your win, and I will pass the mic down to Mr. Peters.
Councilman Beavers? Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem.
I too would like to congratulate you. I look forward to continuing to serve with you, Mayor. Inquiry I do have two. Joseph or Kenny, do y'all have an update on the thoroughfare plan?
So we'll do an in-depth update on the thoroughfare plan at the next council meeting. Lyle Engineering's working on that right now.
Great. I look forward to that.
If I might just add a little bit, the reason we're doing it next month is that MDD funded it, so we thought it'd be wise to do MDD and City Council, and then what we do is we bring it back to City Council for actual adoption. That way you also got some time to digest it.
I think it might be worth probably actually a town hall meeting to review it. So.
I agree. Good idea.
Yeah.
It's been 10 years.
And that we
since
can
we've
discuss
updated it.
next time also, and
Yep.
just kind of throw it out there. It didn't change very much. It's more of an update than we're not adding another I-45 in town, so it's not like some major changes coming down the pipeline. So.
There's one change in particular I'm hoping to see. It'd be a removal of a overpass at Vision Park and I-45, but we can talk about that when it comes.
Well, that's actually needed.
We can talk about that. Also, Lisa, I think MDD would appreciate a 6-month review, like you did with council.
Okay.
Thank y'all very much.
I'd like to congratulate the mayor on his successful journey in the election, and really just be an example to all of us for, when I say successful election, not just the win side of it, but I think he really set an example for all of us in running a race that was clean, that was true, that didn't slam anybody, but just dealt with your platform. And I think that's very admirable, and something I think all of us can, like I say, learn from in that example. So congratulations on a great race, and I too look forward to serving with you here, at least for another year. And then I know I spoke about this last time about information signs and kind of where they're located. I did drive around and actually drove past all of them and then came back around and found them. Maybe we can consider some more strategic location or just simply add some extras. I could see why they're easily missed. So maybe we can talk a little bit more about that. Maybe put that as an agenda item if we need to take action, or I mean, I don't think we're going to be over $15,000 in buying 3 or 4 signs. At least I would hope not. But if we need to put that on as an agenda item to take action, then that's great. But if not, then I would hope our staff would get that figured out.
Thank you, Councilman Fletcher, and thank you for the compliments. I appreciate it. Councilman Raymaker?
Kenny, I do believe that the toddler park fence is complete.
I believe so, yeah.
I didn't want to bless it that way until you said so.
I was hoping it would just kind of pass into the...
It's done, right? It's all done now. It's all done.
Yeah, we had to, they didn't notify us. They came out and installed the gates. So Joseph, myself, and Steve all drove by them about the same time. Then we got together and go, oh, crud, we need to get out there and check it out. So we were wondering if I was the lightest, so I was going to get on, and they were going to swing me around to see if it worked. But we decided against that. But it looks like they came up with a pretty good solution for a heavy-duty hinge. And so they wouldn't be drooping the next day. And so we're authorizing payment.
Well, thanks for driving that forward then.
Now we can move on to parking. So.
And then I also want to congratulate the mayor on his blowout victory this last weekend. The results clearly show the fallacy of a divided city. The citizens of Shenandoah will not tolerate deceptive and negative smear campaigns from a vocal minority. And I'm looking forward to working with you all in the next years.
Thank you, Councilman. All right, well, if nobody's got anything else, I won't drag it all out. I'll just say thank you to everybody. Council, the staff, the residents. It was an amazing amount of support. I appreciate it, and looks like y'all are stuck with me another 2 years at least. So, thank you. All right, so with that, we're going to move into executive session, and we're going to, personnel matters, talk about the city administrator position. I do appreciate everybody coming tonight. I appreciate each and every one of you for taking part in making this community better, and look forward to serving you for another 2 years. We'll adjourn at 8:03, or we will recess at 8:03 to executive session.